Hello, friends. The 873rd day of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. In the Kharkiv border area, the intensity of military actions near Glyaboki, and both in the area of Vovchansk and in the city itself, remains high. A number of sources report that the enemy is regrouping troops and additionally transferring 2 assault brigades to Vovchansk. It is not known how true this information is, but given the recent positive dynamics for the Ukrainian armed forces in the city, this is quite likely. It is obvious that the Russians are looking for a solution to fix the situation for themselves, and, having additional forces, will most likely send them to Vovchansk. The Russians are now also trying to stretch the front line, attacking north of the settlement of Tiki in abandoned gardens in the eastern direction. In this way, the enemy is trying to disperse the strikes of our artillery and pull back some of the drones used. Based on this, in my personal opinion, it is premature to say that the enemy has been completely stopped and the situation in the Kharkiv border area has been stabilized. On the Leamon section of the Kharkiv direction in Makiivka, the enemy has consolidated its position along Zarechna Street and is trying to advance north to the intersection with the bridge along Centralna Street. On the Toretsk section, according to drone footage, the Russians managed to advance and consolidate their position along Petrovelikoho Street in the village of Drushba. The Russians also attacked along the forest belt south of the railway in Pivnishny. The enemy managed to consolidate its position on the eastern outskirts of Zelensky, where it is trying to advance further west. In New York, the Ukrainian armed forces inflicted fire damage on the position of a Russian infantry unit in the area of Teatralna Lane. On the Pokrovsk direction east of Vozvedenka and in the Lozovatsky area, the high tempo of hostilities continues. East of Progress, the enemy has advanced along the railway and landings in an area up to 1.12 kilometers wide. Heavy fighting continues in the area of Novoselivka Persha. The Ukrainian armed forces successfully attacked Russian positions north of the village, while the enemy is attacking in the northern and eastern parts. South of Novoselivka Persha, the enemy has consolidated its positions along a forest belt in an area up to 1.91 kilometers wide. The Russians have also advanced in Yasnobrodivka, according to the Deep State Telegram channel. Ukrainian military expert Merezhnikov stated that Urozhaine in the Berdyansk direction was de facto lost a month ago. According to him at that time, the Ukrainian armed forces controlled a small strip on the northern outskirts of the village. He believes that now the Russians will try to advance even further north, under Velika Novosilka, and it will be difficult further, since Staromayorsky and Urozhaine were good defensive positions. Let me remind you that the capture of the settlement on July 14 was confirmed by Ukrainian and Russian military telegram channels, as well as the Russian Defense Ministry. The General Staff did not comment on this. And meanwhile, NATO has stated that it will not shoot down Russian missiles and aircraft in Ukrainian airspace. NATO's policy is unchanged. We will not participate in this conflict. We will support Ukraine in destroying Russian aircraft, but NATO will not be directly involved, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said yesterday in an interview. Moreover, he was answering a question about whether Poland could provide such assistance to Ukraine. That is, Warsaw, judging by these statements, will not receive NATO support if it decides to directly shoot down Russian targets over Ukraine. The demand to make such a decision was voiced by Ukrainian representatives at a recent NATO summit. But Biden and other leaders of the bloc's countries refused. Meanwhile, Western media outlets are once again publishing articles with pessimistic assessments of the situation at the front. Despite the unfreezing of American supplies and the halting of the Russian offensive near Kharkiv, Ukraine is still far from pushing Russian troops out of its territory. This is reported by the American television channel CNN, citing Ukrainian military personnel. Western weapons are enough to contain Russia, but not enough to radically change the situation, said an officer of the 148th Separate Artillery Brigade with the call sign Senator. He pointed out that Russia still has complete air superiority over Ukraine. Kyiv is currently pinning its hopes on the supply of F-16 fighters. However, according to military expert Konrad Muzyka, it is far from certain that the aircraft will bring about huge changes. The F-16s are fighter jets from the 1980s and 1990s, and their capabilities are worse than the most modern Russian fighter jets, he said, adding that the newest Russian jets would likely outperform the F-16s. He also believes that the current situation on the front is not only a consequence of delays in aid, but also the result of decisions that were made and not made in Kyiv, especially when it comes to mobilization. According to Muzyka, mobilization was tightened too late. The Ukrainians will be in a very difficult situation until August-September, when the first mobilized troops begin to arrive at the front lines. If they can get to that point, then there is a high probability that they will be able to stabilize the situation from August, but until that happens, it is very likely that Russia will achieve new successes, the expert said. He also says that Ukrainian plans and strategy are unclear. It is unclear what the plans are. What is the counteroffensive strategy? The problem is that Ukraine is waiting to see what equipment the West can supply it with, and the West is waiting to see what Ukraine's plans are for the future, he said. Speaking about peace talks, Zelensky reiterated today that Russia's representatives should be at the second peace summit. Let me remind you that Moscow recently announced that it would not take part in such a summit. But it is clear that this position may change depending on the summit's agenda. Meanwhile, more and more people in Ukraine are in favor of negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. 43.9% of Ukrainians said that the time has come for peace talks with Russia, according to a survey by the Razumkov Center, cited by the Zerkalo Netally publication. 35% disagree with this, 21.1% could not answer. At the same time, the majority of respondents are against fulfilling Putin's conditions for ending the war. When asked under what conditions the war should be ended, 51.5% said that it should be on the condition of returning to the 1991 borders, 25.8% to the February 2022 demarcation line, 9.4% along the current front line. Another 13.2% found it difficult to answer. However, the fact that people are ready to negotiate with Russia is remarkable in itself. Friends, this channel exists solely thanks to your support. If you have the opportunity and desire to support the channel, I will be very grateful to you. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.